The twin suns burned over the endless desert of planet Avaris. The air shimmered like fire, and the ground cracked from thirst. In this world, water was not life, it was power. Every drop was controlled by the alien enforcers who ruled with metal hands and cold hearts. Lyra, a young alien girl with silver eyes and dust-colored skin, crouched near a human water station. Her throat burned, her hands shook, and her lips were dry enough to bleed. She had not tasted real water in 2 days. Around her, the wind whispered like ghosts, carrying the smell of metal and sand. She knew the punishment for stealing. Everyone did. But hunger and thirst can make even the wise forget fear. She crawled closer to the metal tank. A single drop slid down its side, shining like a jewel. Her trembling fingers reached out. She caught it with her tongue, cold, pure, alive. For 1 second, she felt human again. And then the alarm screamed. Energy lights flashed red across the sand. Voices shouted in alien language, harsh, sharp, angry. Lyra turned to run, but 2 armored enforcers dropped from the sky on jetpacks. Their claws grabbed her arms, twisting them behind her back. She cried out as they dragged her toward the square. Within minutes, a crowd gathered. Dust rose in waves as the enforcers threw her to the ground. Her thin body hit the sand with a dull thud. One of them, a tall officer with black armor and burning yellow eyes, stepped forward. His voice echoed through a speaker mask. Caught stealing water from humans. The penalty is the loss of 1 limb. The crowd murmured, some in fear, some in cruel excitement. No one helped her. No one ever helped. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. Please, she whispered, I only took a drop. I was dying. The officer raised his weapon, an energy blade that hummed like thunder. The sound made her stomach twist. The blade glowed blue, bright against the dying sun. She shut her eyes. Tears burned her face, mixing with dust. Then, a voice cut through the noise. Calm. Human. Stop. The officer froze. The crowd turned. A man in a desert jacket walked out from the line of onlookers. His hair was dark, his skin sunburned, his eyes steady and tired. A human. The metal tag on his arm said Engineer, Earth Expeditionary Corps. He walked straight toward the enforcer without hesitation. Put the weapon down, he said quietly. The officer's mask clicked. This does not concern humans, Engineer. It does now, the man replied. You're punishing someone for surviving. The alien crowd hissed. The human's calmness was strange, almost defiant. The officer stepped closer, towering over him. Do you wish to share her fate, human? The man looked him straight in the eyes. If mercy is a crime here, then maybe I do. The silence that followed was heavier than the heat itself. The enforcer's hand trembled with anger. He raised the blade again. The human didn't move. He just stood there, between the weapon and the girl. Lyra stared in disbelief. She had seen humans before, quiet, distant workers who never interfered. But this one was different. His name was Evan. She had heard it whispered once by traders, the stubborn mechanic who argues with captains. She never thought she would see him in person, much less stand between her and death. The officer snarled. You will regret this, human. He turned his weapon toward Evan's chest. The desert does not forgive weakness. Evan didn't flinch. Neither does your heart, it seems. The crowd gasped. A few aliens backed away, afraid of the confrontation. The enforcer's armor gleamed as he pointed his weapon. The hum grew louder. Lyra wanted to scream, but no sound came out. And then, the blast. A flash of blue energy shot toward Evan. For a heartbeat, everyone thought he was dead. But the air shimmered around him, and the beam split in half before reaching his body. A round drone, no larger than a helmet, hovered above his shoulder, glowing with a faint light. It had projected a personal shield. The crowd stepped back, shocked. A human protected by defense tech, directly from the command level. Harming him would violate the peace treaty between humans and the alien council. The officer hesitated. His weapon lowered an inch. Evan took that moment to kneel beside Lyra. He untied her hands and helped her sit up. She looked at him with wide, frightened eyes. Why did you stop them? She whispered. Evan looked at her, voice low but firm. Because you're alive, he said. And that's reason enough. The crowd murmured again, uncertain. The officer's fury burned hotter, but he could do nothing now. The law protected the human. He spat out his final words. Then she is your problem, human. Her life belongs to you now. Evan didn't answer. He simply helped Lyra to her feet and guided her away. The crowd parted as they walked through the hot dust, two figures under the dying light, one broken, one brave. Behind them, the enforcer's eyes followed, full of hate. He tapped a small button on his wrist, sending a silent signal across the sky. Above the desert, a red light blinked on a hovering drone. They were being watched. The desert wind carried silence after the chaos. Only the sound of footsteps broke it, one slow, steady human step beside one trembling alien. Evan guided Lyra across the scorched ground toward the edge of the human camp. Behind them, the enforcers watched with cold hatred, their weapons still hot from the blast they had fired, and failed. The moment Evan and Lyra disappeared beyond the dunes, the alien officer activated his communicator. "Record this human," he hissed. "He interfered with our law. The council will hear of this." Back in the human camp, Evan stopped by a half-broken supply tent. Machines hummed faintly around them, filtering water from the deep sands. He set Lyra down on a metal crate. Her body was weak, her lips cracked, her breathing shallow. He poured her a cup of clean water and handed it over. She stared at it, hesitant. "You'll get in trouble," she whispered. "I already am," Evan said softly. "Might as well make it worth it." Lyra took the cup with shaking hands. The first sip hit her throat like fire and mercy together. Tears rolled down her dusty cheeks. Evan turned away, pretending not to see. Outside, the sun was sinking, painting the sand red like blood. But inside the camp, tension rose. Two human officers approached, their expressions tight. "Evan," one of them said sharply, "what did you do out there?" Evan sighed, not looking up. "Stopped a murder." By breaking the interspecies code, the other officer snapped. "You can't interfere with local law. You could start a diplomatic incident." Evan finally turned, eyes cold and tired. "Then maybe the law's the problem." The room went quiet. The officers exchanged nervous glances. They knew Evan's reputation, the engineer who fixed impossible problems but never followed orders. "She's just a kid," he said. "Half-starved. She took a drop of water, and they wanted to cut her arm off. You call that justice?" The first officer rubbed his forehead. "You're not wrong, but this isn't Earth. Mercy isn't part of their system." Evan looked back at Lyra. "Maybe it should be." Outside, shadows moved along the camp walls. The alien patrols had already surrounded the human perimeter, silent, watching, waiting. The air felt heavier with each passing minute. Lyra, still weak, looked at him with confusion. Why do you care?" she asked softly. "Humans never help us. They say we're dangerous, dirty, broken." Evan smiled faintly, the kind of smile that came from old pain. "Because once, someone helped me when no one else would," he said. "Guess I'm just paying the universe back." She studied his face, searching for lies, but found none. He meant every word. Before she could reply, an alarm blared across the camp. Red lights. Warning sirens. A voice shouted, "Incoming hovercraft, unknown signal." Evan grabbed his scanner and rushed to the gate. A black alien dropship descended, kicking up clouds of sand. The same enforcer commander from earlier stepped out with two soldiers, their armor glowing under the sunset. The humans pointed weapons, but Evan raised a hand. "Stand down," he ordered. "Let me handle this." The commander's voice came through his mask, sharp as metal. "You broke the law of Avaris, human. You will surrender the girl." Evan stood tall, his tone calm but iron-hard. "She's under human protection. You can't touch her." "Protection?" The alien's laughter was harsh. "You protect a thief? A traitor to her kind? What makes her worth risking your own life?" Evan's answer was simple. "Because no one else would." The alien's eyes glowed like fire through his mask. You think mercy makes you strong? It makes you weak. She will betray you the moment she drinks her fill. Evan stepped forward, his shadow stretching long across the sand. Maybe. But until then, she's my responsibility. The enforcer snarled. You will regret this. Evan's hand moved slightly. The drone above him activated with a hum, projecting a light barrier around them both. The human soldiers tensed behind him, ready. The enforcers raised their weapons. The air crackled, seconds from war. Then, from inside the ship, a calm female voice spoke through a communicator. Commander, stand down. Orders from the council, do not harm the human. He carries diplomatic clearance. The commander stiffened. The law that had protected Evan in the square now bound them again. He could not touch him, not without risking political chaos. His jaw clenched. Fine. Keep your pet. But remember this, human, the desert takes what it's owed. He turned sharply, boarding his craft. The engines roared, and the ship vanished into the crimson horizon, leaving only dust and tension behind. Evan watched it go, eyes narrowed. He knew what that warning meant. They'd be coming again, not with words, but with weapons. He turned back to Lyra. She was watching him, eyes wide with both fear and something new, respect. Why did you really save me? She asked quietly. No one stands up to them. Evan crouched beside her, his voice low. Because I've seen what happens when good people do nothing. And I won't let it happen again. She hesitated, then whispered, You're strange, human. He smiled faintly. Yeah, I get that a lot. The wind howled across the desert, carrying the last light of the sun. High above, unseen by both of them, a surveillance drone zoomed in on their camp, recording every word, every move. A red signal blinked in its eye, sending data far away to someone watching from the shadows. Someone who had just whispered, Find them. Both of them. Night fell across the desert like a dark tide. The twin suns were gone, and the stars burned cold above the wasteland. Inside the human outpost, the wind whispered through steel frames and half-broken towers. Evan sat near the entrance of the tent, adjusting the small drone that hovered at his side. Its faint blue light glowed softly, circling him like a loyal pet. Across from him, Lyra lay on a thin blanket, half asleep, her breathing slow and tired. For the first time in years, she felt safe. But peace never lasted long on Avaris. From far away, hidden in the darkness, small red lights blinked in the sand, the eyes of hunter drones moving closer. Their wings made no sound, their scanners locked on the camp's heat signatures. Inside, Evan was still awake. He had felt this before, the stillness that comes before danger. The air seemed to hold its breath. He stood quietly, picked up his pulse rifle, and whispered to his drone, Scout mode. The little sphere floated higher, scanning the horizon. Its tone changed, low and urgent. Unidentified contacts. Closing fast. Evan's muscles tensed. How many? 8, no, 10. He cursed under his breath. 10 wasn't a warning, it was a kill squad. He turned to Lyra. Wake up. We have to move. She blinked in confusion. What's happening? They're coming, he said simply. Your friends from earlier, maybe. Or worse. Her body froze. The enforcers? Probably, Evan said, helping her up. And they don't like being embarrassed. Outside, the night exploded in light. Plasma rounds tore through the sand, turning the air white-hot. Sirens screamed as humans rushed out of tents, firing back. The entire camp came alive with chaos and shouts. Lyra covered her ears, terrified. She had lived through battles before, but this felt different. It wasn't war, it was punishment. Someone had betrayed their location. Stay low! Evan shouted, pulling her behind a steel crate. A blast hit nearby, sending sand and metal flying. His shield drone darted around them, projecting a flickering barrier that took most of the impact. Lyra watched in disbelief as the small sphere absorbed the attack. It's protecting us. Evan nodded grimly. It's doing what I can't do fast enough. Another explosion shook the camp. A human soldier fell beside them, armor scorched. Evan grabbed the man's shoulder, but he was already gone. Lyra's eyes widened. Humans were dying to defend her. Her heart twisted with guilt. "Why are they fighting?" she cried. "I'm not worth this." Evan turned, his voice sharp but steady. "That's not your choice to make." She stared at him, confused by the conviction in his tone. He looked away, pressing a code into his wrist pad. "Control, this is Engineer Evan Cole," he said into the comm. "We're under attack by unknown forces. Civilian asset in danger. Requesting drone backup." Static answered him. Then silence. He tried again, nothing. The comms were jammed. He glanced at Lyra. "They don't want help coming." "What will you do?" she asked. He smirked faintly. "Something stupid, probably." Before she could stop him, he stood and ran into open fire. The shield drone followed, extending the barrier wider. Energy bolts hit it like rain, glowing bright in the dark. Evan aimed and returned fire, every shot precise and cold. Lyra watched, heart pounding. She had never seen courage like this, not from her people, not from anyone. A human, risking everything for her, an alien girl he had known for less than a day. A memory flashed in her mind, her mother's voice, long ago, whispering, "The strongest hearts are never born in safety." When she looked back, Evan had taken down 3 drones. The rest retreated for a moment, regrouping. Smoke rose from the sand. Then, through the haze, a tall figure appeared, the alien commander from earlier. His black armor gleamed under the moonlight, his eyes glowing like molten gold. He walked slowly, confidently, his weapon aimed straight at Evan. "So," the commander's voice came through the translator, cold and mocking, "you still think you can protect her?" Evan didn't move. "I don't think," he said. "I know." The commander smirked. "You're a fool. She's the last of a dead house. Her kind would have left you to rot." "Maybe," Evan said quietly, "but I'm not her kind." The alien raised his blaster. "And that's why you'll die." Before he could fire, the shield drone flew in front of Evan. The shot hit it directly, a burst of light and sound. The drone screamed with electronic static and crashed to the ground, smoking. The barrier vanished. Evan stumbled, unprotected now. The next shot would end him. Lyra saw it all, the broken drone, the helpless human, the alien's finger tightening on the trigger. Something inside her snapped. "No!" she screamed. The air around her rippled with strange light, blue and silver energy rising from her skin like flame. Her eyes glowed brighter than the stars. The commander froze, realizing too late what she was. Ancient power surged through her veins, power she didn't know she had. She raised her hands, and a wave of energy burst outward, throwing the attackers off their feet. Sand lifted like a storm around them. Evan turned, shielding his face. "Lyra! What are you?" "I don't know," she cried. "I just can't let you die." The storm exploded outward, blinding white light consuming the desert. When it faded, the enforcers were gone, their ships retreating into the night sky. Evan collapsed to his knees, staring at her. The air smelled of ozone and burned metal. She stood there, shaking, her eyes dimming back to normal. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. Evan rose slowly. "You just saved all of us." She looked at him, terrified of herself. "That power. I thought it died with my family." Evan's expression softened. "Looks like you were wrong." From the distance, a faint drone camera blinked, recording everything, the light, the power, the human and the alien standing together. Somewhere deep in the alien capital, a high-ranking voice received the transmission and whispered, "Find the girl. She's alive." The desert slept uneasy that night. Smoke curled from broken machines and the sand glowed faintly from the energy burst that had saved them. The stars above Avaris burned pale and cold, witnesses to what should have been impossible. Evan sat beside the wreckage of his drone, half buried in sand. Sparks flickered weakly from its damaged core. He ran a gloved hand over its cracked surface, whispering, "You did good, buddy." Behind him, Lyra stood quietly. Her silver eyes were dim, her face pale from exhaustion. The glow that had erupted from her earlier was gone, leaving only confusion and fear. She touched her arm, expecting to feel pain. but she felt nothing except a strange warmth beneath her skin, the echo of something ancient. "What was that?" she asked softly. "That light, that power?" Evan didn't answer at first. He looked at her, really looked. The lines of her face, the way the light caught the faint markings beneath her eyes. He had seen those markings before, years ago, in an old holographic record during his training days. He stood up slowly. "You really don't know, do you?" Lyra frowned. "Know what?" He sighed. "Who you are." She blinked, confused. "I'm nobody. A scavenger. I lived on the edge of the old ruins since I was a child." Evan shook his head. "No. You're not nobody. You're Lyra Vone, last blood of the ruling house of this planet before the Empire burned it down." She froze. "That's impossible. The Valwine family was executed generations ago." "Almost all of them," Evan said quietly. "Not you." Lyra took a step back, shaking her head. "No. I don't believe you." Evan turned to his tablet and projected a blue hologram in the air. The flickering light formed the image of an alien woman, tall, proud, with the same silver eyes and markings. She wore royal armor, elegant and old. Beneath her name, glowing letters spelled Queen Soraya Verne. Lyra's breath caught. She raised a trembling hand toward the image. "That's my mother's face." Evan nodded. "I found this record when we first landed on Avaris. Classified data, buried in the archives. The Council destroyed every mention of your bloodline, said they were traitors. But I kept the file." Her voice shook. "Why?" "Because I didn't believe the story," he said. "The Valwine didn't start the war. They tried to stop it." Lyra's knees weakened. She sat down, holding her head. Memories she had buried started to return, flashes of fire, screams, her mother's arms carrying her through a burning city. She remembered hiding inside a broken water tank while soldiers searched for survivors. She had been 5 years old. Tears ran down her face. "All this time? I thought my family was the reason everything burned." Evan crouched beside her. "That's what they wanted you to believe. The Empire needed a villain. And they found one." She looked at him through tears. "You knew all this, and still saved me." Evan smiled faintly. "Knowing who you are made saving you even more important." Her gaze softened, but behind it grew a shadow of doubt. "If they find out what I am, they'll come for you too." "They already are," he said dryly, pointing to the blinking light on his radar. "See that? That's an orbital scan. Someone's tracking our coordinates." Lyra's pulse quickened. "Then we should run." "Not yet," he said. "If we run blind, they'll find us in an hour. We need to move smart." He opened a digital map of the desert. "There's a hidden valley north of here. Human miners used it before the truce. The Empire abandoned it after the war. It's buried under the ridge. We can hide there." Lyra frowned. "And after that?" Evan hesitated. "After that, we find out who's sending those drones. Someone high up wants you dead, and I need to know why." Lyra stared at him. "Why do you care so much? You're human. My people killed yours in the First War." He met her gaze. "Yeah," he said softly. "And yours died too. Maybe it's time someone decided that's enough." For a moment, they just looked at each other, two survivors from opposite sides of a history built on blood. The wind howled around them, carrying whispers of the past. Then a faint click broke the silence. Evan's drone, the one that had fallen, suddenly emitted a low tone. Its cracked lens glowed red. Lyra's eyes widened. "It's recording?" Evan's expression changed. He knelt and turned it over. A small transmitter was blinking, not his design. A hidden signal chip. Someone had planted it. "Damn it," he muttered. "We've been tracked since the attack." Lyra stepped back, panic rising. "They know where we are." "Worse," Evan said, standing up. "They heard everything." Above them, the night sky suddenly flashed with light, a massive ship emerging from orbit, dark and angular. It wasn't alien. It wasn't human either. It was something else, marked with both insignias blended together, a hybrid craft. Evan's voice dropped. That's not the Council's ship. That's a private war vessel. Whose? Lyra asked. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The ship's floodlights turned the desert white. Through the glare, figures began descending, soldiers in armor that carried both human and alien symbols. Lyra whispered, "They're working together." Evan gritted his teeth. "Yeah. And that means the truth is even uglier than I thought." He grabbed his rifle, slinging it over his shoulder. "We move now. Into the ridge." Lyra hesitated. "Evan, if I really am who you say I am, they'll never stop hunting me." He glanced back, eyes fierce. "Then they'll have to go through me first." The ship's engines roared behind them, shaking the ground. As they ran into the dark dunes, the first searchlights cut through the night, chasing their shadows. Far above, a voice from the ship's bridge said, "Target confirmed. The lost heir of own lives, and the human is with her." The desert wind howled like a wounded beast. Evan and Lyra moved through the shifting dunes, guided only by the faint glow of his wristlight. Every step left a trail that the storm erased within seconds. Above them, the hybrid ship drifted across the night sky like a ghost, silent, watching. After hours of walking, they reached a narrow canyon, hidden deep beneath the ridge. The walls rose high, cutting off the wind. Here, the air was still, the silence too heavy. Evan stopped beside a half-buried transport pod. "Old mining shelter," he said quietly. "From the first human mission here. If it still has power, we can rest." Lyra followed him inside. The air was cold, filled with the smell of rust and sand. He pressed a button on the wall. To his surprise, the lights flickered weakly to life. A small miracle. Lyra sank to the ground, exhausted. "We've been running for hours," she whispered. "They'll find us." Evan checked his rifle. "Not yet. I jammed their scanner codes. It'll buy us a little time." She looked up at him, tired but curious. "You always sound like you've done this before." He gave a small smile. "I've been running from people in power most of my life." Lyra tilted her head. "Why?" He hesitated. "Because sometimes, it's not the monsters who start wars. It's the men who hide behind peace." For a while, there was only silence. The hum of the old lights, the distant thunder of sandstorms. Lyra finally whispered, "Evan, thank you." He turned. "For what?" "For saving me. Again and again. Even when it made no sense." He looked at her for a long moment, his voice softer than before. "It always made sense." A faint beep cut the silence. Evan's wrist console flashed red. "Motion detected," he said quickly. 2 clicks east." Lyra froze. "They found us." He frowned. "No, wrong signal signature. That's human tech." Before he could say more, a beam of light swept through the canyon. Several human soldiers stepped into view, their armor shining under portable lamps. The leader raised his hand. "Evan Cole. Stand down." Evan blinked. "Stand down? What are you?" But the soldier interrupted, voice sharp. "You are under arrest for treason against the Expeditionary Corps." Evan's chest tightened. "Treason?" "The council filed an accusation," the soldier said coldly. "You're protecting an enemy of the state." He pointed at Lyra. Lyra's body went cold. "Enemy?" Evan took a slow breath, stepping in front of her. "You're making a mistake. She's not the threat, they are. There's a hybrid ship tracking her. Someone's—" A loud crack echoed. The shot hit the ground near his feet. The soldiers aimed their weapons at him. "Drop the gun, Cole." Evan raised his hands. "Listen to me. You're being used. Someone inside command is feeding the Empire. You're playing into their hands." The leader hesitated, just for a second. But then his communicator buzzed. A voice came through, cold and precise. "Confirm visual on targets. Eliminate both." Evan's eyes widened. "Wait." Before he could move, a second shot rang out, hitting one of the soldiers in the chest. He fell instantly. Confusion exploded. Plasma fire filled the canyon. Shadows moved along the rocks, alien enforcers dropping from above, ambushing both sides. The humans and aliens were fighting each other now, chaos in the dust. Lyra screamed as Evan pulled her behind cover. "Stay down," he shouted. "They're killing your people," she cried. "They stopped being my people the moment they aimed at you." He fired into the darkness, hitting an enforcer's armor plate. The canyon lit up with fire and light. Explosions shook the ground. Lyra watched helplessly. The humans she had feared all her life were dying, and one of them, the only one who ever protected her, refused to leave her side. An alien soldier dropped near them. Evan turned, fired, too late. The alien swung his blade. The strike hit Evan's shoulder. He fell hard, blood darkening his uniform. "Evan!" Lyra crawled to him, panic flooding her voice. "No, no, stay with me." He gritted his teeth. "I'm fine. I've had worse." But the wound burned deep. Another explosion ripped through the canyon wall. Rocks rained down. Lyra's scream vanished under the thunder. Dust filled the air. When it cleared, half the canyon was collapsed. The soldiers, gone. The enforcers, gone. Only silence remained. Evan lay motionless beside her, his face pale. The light from his wrist console flickered weakly. Lyra shook him, tears streaking down her cheeks. "Wake up, please." He groaned softly, barely conscious. "Lyra!" "I'm here," she whispered, holding his hand. He tried to speak, his voice faint. "Get to the ridge. They can't track you there." She shook her head. "I'm not leaving you." He smiled weakly. "You sound like me now." Then his eyes closed. Lyra pressed her forehead against his chest, sobbing. Around her, the last embers of the battle flickered out. The wind began to rise again, covering the blood and footprints with sand. Through her tears, she saw the stars, cold, distant, silent. "I won't let you die," she whispered. "Not after everything." She tore part of her cloak, wrapped it around his wound, and lifted him onto her shoulders. Her small frame trembled under his weight, but she didn't stop. The storm roared again as she walked into the desert, one alien girl carrying a human through endless sand, hunted by two worlds that wanted them dead. Behind her, a single drone light blinked in the canyon rubble, recording every step. Far above, in the hybrid ship, a calm voice spoke through the static. "They survived the ambush. Prepare the next phase." The desert was endless. The storm had passed, but the silence it left behind was worse. The dunes stretched like waves of gold beneath the cold moonlight, and the only sound was the crunch of footsteps, slow, uneven, heavy. Lyra stumbled forward, her body trembling from exhaustion. Evan lay across her back, barely breathing. His blood had dried black against the torn fabric of his uniform. Every few steps, she looked at his face, pale, motionless, just to be sure he was still alive. Her legs shook, her throat burned, her vision blurred. She had never carried this much weight, not even when her world fell apart as a child. But she refused to stop. Each step was an act of defiance. "You saved me," she whispered through cracked lips. "Now it's my turn." The twin suns were gone, but their heat still lingered, trapped in the sand. Every breath tasted like dust and iron. The desert felt alive, whispering voices that weren't real, memories that weren't hers. Somewhere deep inside her, the ancient blood of House Vine stirred again, calling to her, testing her. "You are not weak," the voice whispered in her mind. "You are what they fear." She closed her eyes, hearing her mother's voice from long ago, soft, fading. "Promise me, Lyra, when the time comes, don't run. Stand." Her knees gave out. She fell to the sand, breathing hard. Evan slipped from her shoulders, landing beside her. She crawled to him, shaking. "Please," she whispered, pressing her hand against his chest. "Don't die, Evan. You can't. You're too stubborn for that." For a moment, there was nothing. Then, faintly, a heartbeat. Slow, weak, but there. She laughed through tears. "Of course, you'd still argue with death." A shadow passed over the sand. Lyra froze. Above, a dark drone hovered, scanning, searching. Its red eye blinked once, locking onto her position. A beam of light flashed down, marking her coordinates. "No," she breathed. Within minutes, the sound of engines roared through the night. A squad of Enforcer hovercrafts appeared on the horizon, lights slicing through the darkness. Lyra's hands clenched. She was trapped. Evan couldn't move. And she was out of strength. But she remembered his words, words that had burned into her heart back at the outpost. "If mercy is a crime here, then maybe I'm guilty." That memory lit a spark inside her, small, but enough. She stood slowly, her body shaking. The hovercrafts circled closer. The commander's voice echoed through a loudspeaker. "Lyra Vine," he shouted. "Surrender now, and your death will be quick." Lyra looked down at Evan, at the human who had risked everything for her. And she smiled faintly. "Quick deaths are for cowards." The commander's tone hardened. "Then you've chosen pain." The first blast hit near her feet, throwing sand into the air. She didn't move. She spread her hands, her heart pounding. The mark on her wrist, the old crest of Vin, began to glow, faint at first, then brighter. The air shimmered around her. Blue light coiled from her palms like ribbons of flame. The soldiers hesitated. "What is she doing?" one of them shouted. Evan's body lay still behind her. Lyra's voice rose, soft but steady. "My family ruled this world once. You took everything, our homes, our children, our name. You called us traitors. But you forgot one thing." The sand beneath her feet began to vibrate. The dunes rippled like water. "You forgot what we were capable of." A blinding wave of light erupted from her body. The energy tore across the desert, shattering the ground and flipping the hovercrafts like toys. The shockwave raced for miles, lighting the night like a sunrise. The soldiers screamed as their weapons overloaded. Energy shields failed. Engines died. When the dust settled, only silence remained. Lyra stood alone in the center of a glassed crater, her hair floating slightly in the static-charged air. Her eyes glowed silver-white, and lines of blue energy pulsed beneath her skin. The ancient blood of her people had awakened fully. She turned to Evan, her chest rising and falling. "You're safe now," she whispered. "Just hold on." Her power flickered again, unstable, too strong for her fragile body. She fell to her knees, pressing her hands into the sand to steady herself. She felt weak, and yet, for the first time, she wasn't afraid. Because now, she understood. The strength she carried wasn't just from her bloodline, it was from him. From the human who had taught her what courage truly meant. In the distance, the wind shifted. A shape appeared through the haze, a lone figure walking toward her. The alien commander. His armor was cracked, his mask half broken, but his rage burned bright. "You think power makes you free," he growled. "You think one burst of light changes the order of the galaxy." Lyra stood, swaying, but unbroken. "No," she said softly. "But compassion does." He aimed his weapon. "You'll die here, girl." Behind her, Evan stirred weakly, opening his eyes just in time to see the commander raise his blaster. Lyra didn't move. She met the alien's glare and whispered, "Then let's find out." The commander fired, a beam of red energy cutting through the air. Lyra raised her hand, and the beam stopped midair, frozen in light. It split apart, scattering into glowing dust. Her eyes turned brighter than the stars. "Your empire ends with me." She stepped forward as the wind rose again, her voice echoing across the dunes. And for the first time, the commander, the same man who once called mercy weakness, stepped back. The first light of dawn broke over the dunes, painting the desert in gold and blood. Smoke drifted through the air like ghosts, and the sand still hummed with leftover energy from the battle. Lyra stood tall in the center of the crater, her body bruised, her eyes glowing faintly silver. Every breath felt like fire, but she refused to kneel. Before her, the alien commander limped closer, his armor cracked, his weapon shaking in his hand. "You think this changes anything?" he snarled. "You're just one girl, one lost name." Lyra's voice was quiet, but it cut through the wind. So was every revolution. The commander raised his blaster, ready to fire, but a single plasma shot hit his shoulder, spinning him backward. He screamed in rage and looked up. Evan was standing behind her, Barely alive, bleeding, but on his feet. His rifle glowed with smoke. "Sorry," Evan said, his voice rough. "Didn't like how you were talking to my friend." Lyra turned, eyes wide. "You shouldn't be standing." He gave a tired grin. "I've been told that before." The commander growled. 2 against an army. "Funny," Evan said, cocking his weapon, "that's my favorite number." The air cracked with fire. The commander's reinforcements emerged from the dunes, soldiers, machines, and drones, hundreds of them. The sky filled with ships, blotting out the sun. Lyra's heart raced. Her power was fading. She had burned too much in the last fight. Evan's shield drone was destroyed. They were surrounded. Evan glanced at her. "You trust me?" She nodded without hesitation. "Then follow my lead." He slammed a beacon into the ground, a small cylinder blinking red. A second later, the sky trembled. From beyond the horizon, streaks of light descended, human dropships, answering his emergency flare. The alien commander's face twisted in fury. "You called them here. You'll start a war." Evan aimed his rifle. "Maybe it's time someone did, the right one." The desert exploded in chaos. Humans and aliens clashed under the rising sun. Plasma bolts tore across the dunes. Ships burned, engines screamed, and dust turned the world into a storm of fire. In the center of it all, Evan and Lyra fought side by side. One human with a broken gun, one alien girl with dying power. He moved with soldier precision, she moved like lightning. Together, they were unstoppable. When his gun ran dry, she covered him with bursts of blue energy. When her strength faltered, he steadied her hand. Every time she fell, he pulled her up. Every time he stumbled, she took his place. Across the chaos, the commander advanced again, unyielding. His armor regenerated with dark energy, his voice booming over the comms. "You can't stop destiny, girl. You were born to fall." Lyra's breath came heavy. "Maybe," she whispered, "but I choose how I fall." She summoned the last of her strength, her eyes glowing bright again. Energy flared around her like wings of light. She threw her hand forward, a beam of blue fire cutting through the storm, striking the commander square in the chest. His armor shattered. The explosion echoed across the desert. Silence followed. Only the wind dared move. Lyra collapsed to her knees, shaking. The light faded from her eyes. Evan ran to her, catching her before she hit the sand. "Hey," he said softly, "you did it." She smiled weakly. "Did we win?" He looked at the burning horizon. "We're still breathing. That counts." A faint laugh escaped her lips. "That's such a human answer." "Best kind," he said with a smile. Above them, the last enemy ship retreated into the sky, vanishing like smoke in the sun. The war, at least here, was over. Lyra leaned her head against his chest. "You shouldn't have stayed." He looked down at her. "I told you once, mercy isn't weakness. It's survival." Her eyes shimmered. "You changed me, Evan. You changed what I thought humans were." He smiled faintly. "And you reminded me what being human really means." She reached for her belt and took out a small metal canister, one she had stolen days ago, before all of this began. She opened it carefully. Inside was a handful of clear water, still shining under the dawn. She cupped her hands, poured some out, and lifted it toward him. "Here," she said softly. "You saved my life with this. Now let me save yours." Evan looked at the water, the same thing that had started everything. He laughed quietly. "Guess we've come full circle." He drank, then smiled, exhausted. "Best drop of water in the galaxy." Lyra closed the canister gently and whispered, "No, it's the first drop of peace." They sat in silence as the sun climbed higher. Around them, the sand was littered with broken machines and cooling metal. Yet for the first time, Avaris felt alive again, not as a world of punishment, but of rebirth. Evan looked at her, his tone thoughtful. "What will you do now? You're the heir of Ern. You could rebuild your people." She gazed at the horizon. "Maybe someday. But right now, I just want to learn what it means to live like a human." He chuckled. "Then we'll start with breakfast. She smiled, tilting her head. What's breakfast? He grinned. You're gonna love it. They both laughed, quiet, tired, but real. High above them, a lone satellite turned its lens toward the desert, capturing the image of two figures sitting side by side, one human, one alien, sharing water beneath the rising suns. Across the stars, millions would soon see that image. Some would call it rebellion. Others would call it hope. But for Evan and Lyra, it was something simpler. A promise that mercy, in the end, is humanity's greatest weapon. The end. Compassion is the rarest resource in the universe, and the only one worth fighting for.